Hi, I'm James Naylor Green, professor of Brazilian history and culture at Brown University and the national co-coordinator for the U.S. Network for Democracy in Brazil. This program is part of the Democracy Observatory and is supported by the Washington Brazil office. This is Brazil Unfiltered. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming Marcelle Decothé to our program. Marcelle is from Rio de Janeiro and is currently the advocacy director of the Instituto Marielle Franco. She is also working on her doctorate in sociology at the Fluminense University and has been working on topics related to activism and race, favelas, human rights, and public security. Marcelle was a member of the delegation of 19 civil society organizations sponsored by the Washington Brazil office that recently traveled to Washington, D.C. to talk to policymakers and legislators about the threats to democracy in the upcoming Brazilian elections. The delegation met with officials at the State Department, members of Congress, a representative of the AFL-CIO, ambassadors to the Organization of American States, and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Marcelle, thank you for joining us today on Brazil Unfiltered.
Hi, James. Hi, everyone. Thank you for receiving me here.
So first of all, could you tell us a little about your background and how you became politically engaged?
Okay. So, like you said, I'm Marcelle, a Black beautiful woman from a favela called Parada de Lucas in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I graduated in Defense International Strategic Management in the Federal University here in Rio. I have a master in public policies in human rights in the same university. And I'm also, we call it here popular educator, because I work with like youth that want to have opportunity in universities here. So I work in we call it like popular educator. I am a researcher for race and violence. And I am a co-founder of a movement called Favelas na Luta. It's favelas fighting against police violence, inequalities, and I am always like because I'm from a favela and I'm facing each day these problems here in Brazil, like police violence, political violence, and I always work to make my favela a better place. So I guess I met Marielle Franco in this fight, in this favelas, like fighting against all this kind of stuff that we live here. And
so before we talk about Marielle Franco, I'd like to ask you, tell me a little bit more about your family. What did your parents do, or what's the situation in your family?
Yeah, I never met my dad because it's normal here, Black families from peripherals that are very matriarchal. I don't know if it's right to say that.
Yeah.
And my mother was working, how did I say, like cleaning houses. And she actually this year, she like entered university. She had 50 years old, and in this year she finally get to enter university to study sociology.
Wow.
Sociology. And
so you're just describing something which is amazing and what's happened in Brazil in the last 10 years, 15 years, where members of communities of low income or poor communities never really had access to the free public education system. So what happened in Brazil in the last decade or so that allowed that to happen, that you were able to go to the university and your mother is now planning to be a sociologist?
Yeah, so I'm like from a public policy college. I don't know say in English, but quotas, like we have vacancies for people. You can translate
right.
for me.
A quota system and allowing certain people from low income or from Black or indigenous backgrounds getting a special number of places in a school?
Yeah. So I am the first of my family to get a university. I entered university in 2010, and I was the first. After me, my sister enter, and my brother, and now my mother. And it's very important to us here, like fight for education, public education, quality public education. And because public policy from PT, like this party, the biggest party of the Latin America here, because that public policy, right now we have a lot of Black women, Black people in Brazil from favelas and peripherals graduated in several different like schools, and the not only on humanities, but also have a lot of different careers. And right now we're fighting for a democracy here, using our knowledge, because we have this background, and you know it's very important to defend this for us.
So you work for the Instituto Marielle Franco. Why don't you tell our listeners and our viewers who was Marielle Franco, what happened to her, and what has been her legacy?
Yeah, Marielle was a councilwoman elected in Rio de Janeiro in 2016 with more than 40,000 votes in the city. She was a sociologist as well, and human rights defender, and she worked in the state council committee fighting against police violence. And that's why I know Marielle after early then she like became a councilwoman, because we worked together as activists here. And 2018 she was murdered, and the Brazilian justice until now doesn't have response about who ordered this brutal crime. And after that, and Marielle Franco Institute was born from Marielle's family needs of dealing with a huge demand of responsibility after this violent crime that took her life. So our mission is to inspire, connect, and potentialize Black women, LGBTQIA plus, and peripheral people to keep movement this structure of the society.
And does the Institute have a suspicion of who actually ordered the murder of Marielle Franco? She was assassinated with her driver, Anderson Gomez. And do you have any notion of? We know who the killers were, but do we know who ordered the killing and why?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know who might like order that. We have like several different investigations that lead to different persons here. Person who is involved in militia, the paramilitary groups here, and people that was involved in a lot of discussions against Marielle here and etc. But we don't have we don't it's for our protection, do not say the names, because it's very difficult and dangerous for us telling about that. But we are struggling, seeking justice, because this crime, we used to say here that we only have the true democracy in Brazil when the murderers of Marielle, who ordered Marielle killed, has to be found, right? Because it's very difficult living in the country that this type of crime is allowed, for society is allowed, for the criminal system justice. And right now we have to fight for justice, not only for Marielle, but for every human rights defender who lost their lives in this recent extraterritorial that we live here.
And it's certainly gotten worse and worse in the last 3 years with Jair Bolsonaro as the president of the country. There's no question about that. So you represented, along with Marielle's sister, Anneli, you represented the Institute at this event, this week of activities in Washington, D.C. what were the reasons why the Instituto Marielle Franco decided it was important to participate in this delegation that went to Washington, D.C. at the end of July?
So I guess, first of all, the strengthening of Brazilian democracy also involves the fight against racism, the fight for climate and environment justice, and the fight against the inequalities present in our country. The advocacy agenda in Washington that week was important to reinforce our messages about defending the Brazilian electoral system for organizations that are leading the agenda in Brazil. So it's important to us, like, share the idea of democracy, that this democracy, Black people, women, people from favelas and peripherals, they are part of this democracy, and we are leading a different revolution here in Brazil, discussing about that, doing advocacy, doing mobilization, organize people here. And for us, it's important to be part of this delegation because it's our point of view. It's also like our point of view is very important to do this agenda. So that's why we came together with this other Brazilian civil society, because we think it's important to have this Black movement participation in this discussion about democracy.
Had you been to the United States before this delegation?
No, it was my first time, and people say to me, "So your first time in US, you arrive directly in the Capitol, so the Capitol and like doing advocacy." So it's my first time, and yes, I did that. So for me, it was great because it's a historical first time in US, but also difficult because I didn't know. It's my first time in an English country, like people saying, like discussing English. It's a challenge because it's a enormous barrier here in Brazil. Black people like access to speak English, so it's very important to me as well, like an individual.
And so, just curious, what were your first impressions of the United States?
So because it's difficult, because in Brazil you have like a dream version of US, like because it's a land of opportunities, but when you came, you see how the American society was divided. And so I honestly, I arrived in Washington, I was looking for inequality. So where do the Black people live? Where do the poor people live? But it was very important because I guess it's a beautiful country and it has a important part in the region, and was very good, like see how the things work in the US and electoral system and the political system, how the organizations work and how we can connect different groups, and how fight for democracy is transnational, right? It's beyond it's beyond how can I say frontiers? I don't know.
But borders.
Border, yeah.
Right.
And I guess I have a good first impression because after Washington, I went to New York, so it's very different. But I have for me, it was a good experience.
So there were 19 groups that were in this delegation. It was a very large delegation of all kinds of people representing indigenous peoples in Brazil, Black women's groups, environmental groups, human rights groups, other kinds of organizations defending free speech and journalism and freedom of the press. The first day you all met with representatives from the State Department in the first meeting. What was that like? What was it like, that meeting with the State Department representatives, and what message did they communicate to the delegation?
So it was very important to meet these like representatives of the State Department because it's a new government in the US, and like we went to like discuss about the Brazilian situation, about our president and what we're living here. So we say it that we live in right now a constant threat in Brazil, which put at risk our democracy, but specifically for us, like Black organizations, these risks affect different people from favelas and LGBTQIA plus, peripheral, and we ask these American interlocutors to inform themselves about the situation in Brazil. And here we have Jair Bolsonaro. It's our president. It's a type of guy very similar that Trump. And we live here. We call Bolsonarismo. That it's like the same. You guys live with Trumpismo, like Trump's this idea of the faces, like in our society, and we discussing in the State Department that our electoral system is safe, and it's very important to these authorities defend democracy in Latin America. And they manifest, like, it was wonderful because was very welcoming for these people, and they manifest themselves with they gonna like do statements, and like they gonna like recognize the reliability of the Brazilian electoral system and the validity of our election results. So I guess it's very important to us.
So President Bolsonaro has been questioning the electronic voting system, and also stated in the past that if he doesn't win the elections, then he thinks the elections are fraudulent, and now is mobilizing his supporters on the 200th anniversary of independence in Brazil on the 7th of September to come out to support him, politicizing what should be a national day of celebration of 200 years of the country's independence. Your impression was from the State Department that they were going to recognize the results of the elections and believed in the elections in Brazil? What was your impression of their message that they gave you?
Yeah, again, like I said, I guess it was very important, and they received well our demands and our messages, and they say that it's very important to strengthen the Brazilian democracy, and they will gonna do the recognition, immediately recognition after the results of the elections of Brazil, and we talk about how our, like you said, how our system is efficient, and that how we trust in our electoral process. And was very great because they are very surprised of the 19 organizations here in Washington doing that. So I guess they stay a little bit surprised by our ability to organize this meeting, and of course the Washington Brazil office did an incredible work to do that and to like make this kind of stuff happen. So for us it's very important, and they say it, so we're gonna recognize your process, your electoral process. We believe that it's efficient, we believe that it's reliable, and we're gonna help you send this message to different countries, and like, so we talk a lot of people here about that.
So what other meetings did you find particularly important for you that week? What were the highlights? What were the things that stood out for you in terms of the different meetings?
I guess the meeting with Hank Johnson was very important to me, because we seeking here in Brazil do a Black caucus like US. We want to elect Black people in the Congress, and Hank Johnson is the leader of Black caucus in the Congress in US. So for us, it was very important to meet him and to talk about our issues, about democracy, about the importance of recognition of our electoral system, but also talk about our specifically goals about strengthening Black candidates in Brazil in this election. The other meeting was the Congress asking about the capital episode. For me, was very important because I guess we're gonna facing here in Brazil after the election a thing like that, because we want to create the case about how you can protect our institutions and how we can using these US episodes to help us here to be prepared for what's going to happen. So for us, it's very important to meet them. And the third, I guess, meeting was the OEA, the
Organization of American States.
Yeah, the Inter-American Commission because of women's rights, because we use here a lot this CG, the Inter-American Commission. And in Marielle Franco Institute, we work with political violence, and that's where a message that we passed in US as well. And here we searching forms to protect these Black candidates, and so we don't want a new Marielle in this election. And talking with this commission was very important because we talked directly to the people who made these decisions about protection in the region. So it's another meeting important for the whole group, not only for us, but people.
So as you know, probably from paying attention to things internationally, Brazilians know a lot about the United States, but people in the United States know very little about Brazil. Even though the countries have a lot of similarities, they're large continental countries. They both have a horrible legacy of enslaved Africans, inequalities, ongoing racism, many things that are in common, but unfortunately, Americans know much less about Brazil. What was your sense when you were talking to Congress people and other representatives of their knowledge or the willingness to learn about Brazil? Did you find receptivity among the people that you met in terms of trying to understand what's going on in Brazil, or what was your impression?
I have a good. I did have a good impression about that. I have one meeting specifically because the other things that we know here, a lot of US, like you said, but a lot of some representatives in US, Bernie Sanders, for me was the incredible meeting because I loved Bernie Sanders. But when I went to this meeting with him, historical meeting for Brazilian delegation, he started to ask something a little basics about Brazil, how works your electoral system? It's like France. How many populations has in Brazil? How it's something so you speak Portuguese, not Spanish, something basic. And was difficult, but also he seems to me very content to receiving us and very interesting, and so I guess I want to know more about Brazil. I guess it's not his fault. They don't know, but it's frustrating sometimes that so you have to say that we speak Portuguese and our system, okay, it's like France because we have president in the state works like that. And he started asking something about, so what is the tax of poverty in Brazil? What is the tax of
you mean the rate of poverty?
The rate, yeah, the rate of poverty. What is the rate of unemployed people in Brazil? And we started to answer it, these questions, and was a geography test that we passed, I guess, and was very interesting. I guess we are very welcome for for every congressman or woman that we met in this DC. And I guess this is a part that is very important to keep producing like research about Brazil and producing work about Brazil, translate that and send to them, because it's very important they like get know more about us for us. Like, so our job or work is the, how did I say, it's a great fount of information.
Right, a fountain of information or source of information.
Source of
information. Well, you know, I teach Brazilian history at a very good university with very smart kids. They know nothing about Brazil before they take my class, nothing, or one thing or two things, because there's an uneven relationship of power between the United States and Brazil in terms of knowledge and circulation of knowledge. So this was a very intense week with 19, and there were more than 19 people on the delegation. Did you make new friends or did you make new acquaintances which you found valuable?
Yeah, I guess we lived that week more connected with these different Brazilian organizations. Like you said, we have like different organizations that work with different subjects. So criminal justice, indigenous, Black women, democracy, etc. And so I guess we did a great network that right now we need to continue foment something that we can work together to defend democracy, because it does not end in the election. It's a difficult job that we take a different. We're gonna take a lot of years. Like you work in democracy in Brazil, you know it, and so I guess it was a great get knowing more these organizations, and I guess it's more important here right now, keep doing the job that we started in DC.
So together. It looks like in the polls that Lula still is in ahead, and looks like he will win the elections unless something very tragic or unexpected happens. What do you see the challenges of the new government if Lula is in fact elected? What will be the challenges for social movements such as the Instituto Marielle Franco and other social movements who are fighting for social justice and equality? What will be the challenges?
Yeah, I guess first of all, it's important to say that we fighting here right now to be able to participate of these moments and Lula is a candidate because we want to participate in the program. We want to construct the agenda. So the agenda of Brazil for the next 4 years, we want to be participating in that. And right now it's difficult because it's the races and the sexes and the LGBT phobia, it's a structural thing. And so the PT is a traditional party and has a lot of white guys in the front. And so right now we're fighting to we together because our goal is defeat Bolsonaro, but we have a lot of differences. But I guess Brazil, it's difficult to say Bolsonaro break the country because we have a lot of people with hunger here. 33 million people right now are spent. How did I say How did I say, James?
In poverty or below the poverty level? Yeah,
below the poverty.
Yeah,
they are below the poverty and they passando fome, hunger, and it's very difficult. 33 million of people, and we have the biggest rates of police violence, and we have the biggest rates of modern mortality in the health system, and in Amazon suffering with the climate change, and indigenous people who are hunting by the institutions connected with Bolsonaro government. So right now it's very difficult to be a Brazilian, but we know that Lula need to be a lot of support to like pass this for this first year of this government, because it's in this first year that we believe so we're gonna clean the house, like organize the house, and be able to return to the track that we was after really Bolsonaro. So we are organized. We believe that we need to strengthen social movement here, civil society, because I guess we already have the biggest part in this election, and I guess after we need to keep like strengthening, keep like doing public policies, send to the government, work with these representatives in Congress. I guess our part in this next year, 2022, will be very important. So I don't know if I answer you.
No. I think that's something that many people are saying, that it's going to be the economy is in difficult times in Brazil. There's a lot of unemployment. I was really shocked when I went to São Paulo and Rio this year to see the number of people who are homeless on the streets. It's just much. I've never seen it so bad in Brazil. It's really a very shocking time in the country. So do you have any other final message or comments or thoughts that you'd like to share with us today about your experience in Washington, D.C. with the Washington Brazil office?
No, I guess thank you for sorry for my English, and thank you for
your English is fabulous, because as you point out, there's not really good instruction of English in Brazil in the public schools, and so it's hard to learn a foreign language.
I learn for myself, and I keep trying to learn for myself, but I never went to a class for English here. But it's important to use this space to talk about our vision here, and thank you for letting me do that, James, and everyone that works with you here, and that. So for me, it was very important. I guess the Marielle Franco Institute like started something, and we want to keep connecting with the organizations from the US, because we believe that our work, Marielle legacy, is international, is global. And I guess it's very important to keep saying that and keeping doing things like that. So Washington Brazil office did an amazing job, because it's very difficult, reunited so close to the election here, like 19 organizations, the challenges of the logistics, the challenge of these agendas. So I guess it's a thing that we want to celebrate. We need to celebrate it. You need to celebrate. And I guess the last thing is, for us, it's historical that we have so many Black women in this delegation. So many Black women that are leading right now in Brazil different strategies to defeat Bolsonaro and defeat inequalities and strengthen our communities here. So I guess it's historical, because for all of us Black women in this delegation was the first time that we see people like us, and we see how it's important to like strengthening the idea of a democracy that includes us. So, and I guess it's that. So thank you very much for letting me do that, talk about that here.
Well, it was a pleasure working with you on the delegation in Washington, D.C., getting to know you personally, and also inviting you to be on our show. I want to really thank you for joining us today on Brazil Unfiltered.
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed the interview today. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It helps other people find the program. Have a great week. Until next time, até a próxima.